Welcome on back to Storming the Field as we look at the matchups for, if you can believe it now, Week 8 already. We're almost halfway through this thing. We got a lot of compelling stories shaping up, working into this one. I'm Ian Oliver.
And I'm Steve Bender. So some of the big headlines, we talked about the Kansas City Chiefs. They're undefeated,
Somehow.
even though Patrick Mahomes ain't playing like the Patrick Mahomes that we've seen, but they're still undefeated.
Still the MVP favorite somehow, too.
And somehow they just picked up DeAndre Hopkins. So this is another big talking point we'll get into. Drake May. Look at what Ian's repping. He's excited. The Patriots are, their quarterback's looking good.
Yep.
He's showing some promise right now. And we'll be talking about, of course, the man that I thought was going to be the comeback player of the year.
Your boy Nick Chubb, he's finally back on the field. He was back in pay dirt. We were watching the games together last weekend. Steve was hyped to see him back in the end zone. Almost 400 days, just short of that, since his season-ending injury. There was no doubt, though. This man's a machine. We knew he would be back, and he scored the team's only touchdown.
Only touchdown, and I think he had another touchdown that got called back. I remember getting really hyped about that. Hopefully this is a sign that he'll keep finding the end zone. We're going to be forecasting a whole nother week of drama, and that does include finally some weather out west. We'll get into that game, of course, but our next guest knows a lot about the competitive edge in just life in general. Joined today by a former NFL athlete, three-time American Ninja Warrior, international speaker, author, and host of the Dark Work podcast, Anthony Trucks. Normally, we follow that up with a nickname, but when you got a God-given name like Trucks, you don't need a nickname. Anthony, thank you so much for helping us out here on the podcast.
Count me in. Actually, my nickname was Truck Stop when I was in college.
Okay.
When you were a kid, you drive by a truck, you put your hand in the air like So I would do my thing. When I got like a great play, I would get up and do the truck stop. So
Boom. That is probably one of the most epic football names I've ever heard. So that really worked. This is a Fox Weather podcast.
Oh yeah.
I know we're obligated to talk about football and weather and the intersection of those two things. If it was up to me, we'd be talking 30 minutes about American Ninja Warrior because that is super awesome. We got to get into it. I have to shout out, we can see the helmet behind you.
Right.
You're an Oregon Duck, 7-0. Number one in the nation. You played in the Pac Northwest. What kind of elements did you face up there? You have any big weather memory games?
Man, you know what's funny is even to this day now, I like the rain. I'm from California where I'm at right now, so the rain's not my norm, but it was always cold. But you started to make it like an asset, and it's always been a blast. And I love, at Autzen. I actually was there when we played Ohio State a couple of weeks ago. We just drove up impromptu, but the whole it never rains in Autzen Stadium. It's kind of the one thing you always hear. But no, you get used to it, and then at a certain point in time, you embrace the suck of it. It was always cold, It's just kind of something you got used to. And then when you're tackling somebody, your helmet gets hit, or your hands get hit, and they get it's that shooting pain. But I think it toughens you a little bit. You kind of get used to it.
No question.
And Anthony, I want to ask you about the rain there, how it's a little different than some other spots in the country, because when you think about the game this weekend, we're going to dive in a little deeper on Seattle and the Bills, and we're expecting some rain there, but this is that constant drizzle that, it's just like you can never dry out, it feels like.
It's not. Well, I played with the Buccaneers, and so I remember being there. It was the first time I'd ever experienced summer showers, which is like, it gets so hot, the world goes, hey, let me cool you down a little bit, and it drops horrendously large, rain on you, and then within 10 minutes, the ground is dry, and you can't breathe. It's like you're in a sauna. Whereas the rain you have in like the Northwest, it's like this blanket of like cold. It's like foggy, and then it's wet. You get ice in a windshield, which from California never had that happen until I got to college. And it makes it to where it's not just wet, but it's cold and wet. And so like the ball, like think about it to catch a football or like hold a ball. Your hands when they're cold don't move as fast, and it's wet at the same time. So it's horrible. But if you're used to it and you adapt to it, man, it becomes a great tool. So it's a different kind of rain for sure in the Northwest.
I know what you're talking about too. I lived in Tampa Bay for a long time, and whether you're playing one snap of football or you're walking to your car, you got to deal with exactly what you were just describing. Do you feel like one of those is more impactful than the other? It has to be the cooler rain, if I had to guess.
I would for sure say that. I mean, I could deal with hot. I mean, it's just hot. Drink water, put some ice on, you'll be good, right? You can't escape the cold and the wet when you're up in the Northwest. Like, it's just there, and you got to play in it. And so, I think that the worst one to play in is going to be that cold and wet.
Can you give us a little insight, Anthony, on the defensive side, right? You played strong safety. I think you played a little bit of linebacker too, right? For Oregon.
Linebacker.
So when you're thinking about that constant rain and how that now factors in, like you had said, if you embrace the suck, you can use that to your advantage from the defensive mindset. How do you do that? How do you implement that to the fullest to kind of suffocate the offense?
Well, it's two parts. One's that like the mental game of, so this is always a thing, and I didn't get this at first, but like linebackers don't wear sleeves. And so they just, they said strong safety. I was a linebacker. I think it was good for the recruiting purposes for our D coordinator at the time. But like it was LBs don't wear sleeves. So you have a psychological part of it, right? Which is, I'm going to come out there. Remember that one game where you saw, I think like DK Metcalf and some guys came out before one of the games. It was cold, they had no shirts on.
Yep.
It's a mental thing, right? So first you play that mental game. And secondly, I dish it out play after play. If I can break your will, when you're already cold, your brain's already going like, oh man, it's cold. If I can pull that string a little bit, dude, by the second half, like you're down. Like I can kind of demoralize you a little bit. So, but you got to be willing to dish it out.
Yeah.
So you have to know that you're going to be cold. It's going to hurt you as well when you kind of lay that impact. But if you can make a big hit, man, in the cold, it's like, gosh, I'm like, man, it's cold, it sucks, and I'm getting hit.
So it's physical and mental. I mean, you got DK Metcalf. He's built like a transformer.
I was about to say, that's the only way that works. If we go out there shirtless, Ian, I don't think anybody's getting intimidated. They're like, oh, sign me up.
A little different dude. He's a little different character for sure. You did that whole one-handed block on something. He took someone's soul last week. That's wild.
Although looks can be deceiving because you got Patty Mahomes, who he said he's kind of got dad bod. He's got a little bit of a beer belly. And he straight up trucked somebody into the end zone. That was a welcome to the NFL moment last weekend.
Yeah, young Buckaroo got bucked, didn't he? Hey,
Stepped over him.
It's part of the game. You gotta bring it. Don't half step. You better, if you come with it, come with all of it.
Yep,
that's true.
Yeah,
and you mentioned DK, by the way. Let's dive into that game. That's the biggest game for us when we're looking at that Rowie. That's risk of weather impact. We'll dive into the weather, but what you had mentioned with DK Metcalf, concerns that he would even be playing because of that knee sprain.
Yeah, so Anthony, that's our metric that we do on Fox Weather, Rowie, risk of weather impact, where we try to take in all of the meteorological conditions and then see how those might factor into the game. And this is the only game this week. I mean, we got really good weather for almost the entire country.
Yeah.
We've got the Rowie for this one up into medium, wind gusts up to about 25 miles per hour, and that rain. If there's a good thing about saying atmospheric river, it means thank goodness we're closer to the end of the hurricane season.
Yeah.
But we've got an atmospheric river forecast now for the Pac Northwest.
Yeah, and we're looking at the core of that, really going to push into British Columbia, which is far north. So you're looking at the southern side of this kind of sweeping through. That means the winds are going to be coming in out of the southwest. It's all about the angle of the wind, too. And, Anthony, that might be a good insight for you because we've talked with multiple safeties at this point. Duron Harmon, he was a free safety. Anthony Colbert, he was a strong safety. But knowing the wind angle is such a big factor when you're a ball hawk because it could completely stop it, and you could, of course, either get that pass deflection or interception.
Right.
Looking at this here, this game, now we laid it out, right? Medium weather impact. I'd love to get your insight. I mean, we got two teams that are used to these elements, right? Seattle, they're used to, of course, as a home game, but the Bills, off of Lake Erie, they deal with their own type of wet, cold mess. What do you think this kind of factors into the overall dynamic or strategy of this game?
Well, I think it's different because Buffalo it's a different place. I went there for a workout one time. I remember it was like hell cold. It was I say hell cold, like it would be like. And you know what's crazy? They flew me out one week, and then for some reason I got there all the way from California, and then I go, hey, what time's the bus here tomorrow? They go, oh, why are you here? It's not till next week. I had to fly back home and back out the next week. Wild, dude. But I think that we're early enough in the season where it hasn't hit that full weather type feel, right? Buffalo has it. Stuff is definitely cold. But Seattle, man, it's got a different sense. Like for me, if you have a lot of wet and a lot of rain, Seattle's going to have the advantage, in my opinion, because they're used to it. Now, they may not be practicing it every day, right? They have the indoor facility, they have the big bubble they go into, but every day when you're living in that, you kind of get used to the normalcy of it. Now, I will say this. if you have practice, which they do, where you're seeing that ball in flight, which you maybe if the ball gets too much air and all of a sudden wants to take a little wiggle, but you can see that and sense it. It's like for me, like a baseball player. Like my wife, she's played baseball, played softball, not just baseball, obviously. And there's a certain way, like when I go out with her, I am horrible. I'm an athlete, but I am horrible because when that ball's coming in at an angle, I don't know where it's about to go. But if you've taken 1,000 of those reps, you can close your eyes once it leaves the bat and go, I know where it's going to go. So you can feel it almost instinctually. And I feel like they'll have the ability to have seen that enough in their own environment to know how to be able to adapt to the ball when it's in the air.
And there's a pride in that, right? There's an advantage,
Yeah.
as you pointed out, to that. The whole region.
Oh, yeah.
I know this because randomly I was with my wife. We were walking through Central Park just a few days ago, and we were walking down by the fountain, and this
Mhm.
couple kind of stopped us. We get into a conversation. They're like, "We're from Portland, Oregon." I'm like, "Oh, welcome to New York. How you doing?" They're like,
Yeah.
"Do you watch football? Have you seen the Oregon Ducks?" So that's why we have Anthony. I wanted to ask you about it. This
Yeah.
is for some of these places, you're stuck in that pattern, and much like the lake
You
effect
know
snow
it.
we were talking about in Buffalo, part of I guess embracing the suck or being there is enduring what can seemingly be at times constant temperatures in the mid 50s,
Oh, the rain, the
gray, and
darkness.
showers. How
Yeah, dude.
much of an actual advantage is that, though, when you're immersed in that, you're practicing in it every day, you live in it, and you expect it?
A lot. I'm telling you, dude, it's a different. Here's my wife. She runs track right now, and she actually doesn't. She can't do things that are like inclement weather. If it's too hot, she has to find shade. If it's too cold, she can't function this. And in my head, I remember them subjecting us to it intentionally.
Oh, yeah.
It is dark. It is hazy. It is gray. And at this point in my life, I'm a grown man now. I'm 40. The reality is when this happens, because it's almost like the Stockholm effect. I think it is. I did it so much. I'm like, oh, look, it's muggy outside. You kind of get this turn to where when it is gray and it is hazy and it is rainy, some people come in, their energy drops. And if they're not used to it, like you don't know how to bring it back up sometimes. Whereas when you've been in it for so long, you kind of get excited a little bit, like you get amped up a little bit. So literally the internal energy of how I function is different because I was in it. I was bathed in the crazy, right? And if you can lean into that side of it, you definitely have a mental edge, but you also have a physical edge because your ability to function comes from how you can get your mind going. And if you think about like the days of, the wintertime, one of the best thing to do is the fire gets lit and you sit down and you put a blanket on and it's like you gotta relax. We don't do that. When you're used to that, it turns you back up to a whole new level.
I like that. Bathed in the
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like Bane energy from the Dark Knight, right? Like you merely adopted the
Yeah.
dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
Yeah.
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 And we talk about just in life in general. I know you're an international speaker, a motivational speaker, you do this way better than I'm saying, but you don't want to get comfortable in life because where you excel, where you grow as a person is in that adversity, right? And so when
Yeah.
you lean into that adversity, and kind of what you've talked to about a lot here, Anthony, is you use it as your advantage and you start growing
Yeah.
stronger and stronger. I was an athletic trainer and physical therapist out at UCF where I went to college, and the track athletes, it was very funny because it was such a
Different, dude.
mental game. They are so gifted and they are so coordinated in whatever event you're talking about. But if there was something that they were off mentally, they just couldn't fire on all cylinders. Football,
different breed.
it's all about just getting that hit, right? You get that one rep where you feel something, and then you can start bringing that energy and you bring that balance, and you bask in the chaos. Let's get into some of these other games, by the way. Looking at the rest of this, we were looking at spots of the Northeast where there's that potential. We had a cold front sweep through early in the week. It looks like it cleared out in time. Good football.
Yeah, we've got this big area of high pressure. It feels like it's been a semi-permanent weather feature, right?
Yeah.
So much so that last week on the pod, we were talking about the same weather feature. It's still there. Front tried to move in this week. It completely eroded it. And we got a grand total of a trace of rain at Central Park. The streak continues without at least 1/100th of an inch. Insane. I think we're up to almost, I think today's 26.
26.
Yeah.
Newark closing in on the all-time, which is close to MetLife Stadium. So we're talking about these dry streaks. Let's take it down south real quickly. The Florida games was another spot where we could potentially have seen something when we were looking at this early in the week. That's cleared out. So Packers taking on the Jaguars. You're looking at lower 80s to upper 70s. And then we get into Tampa, right? You lived there.
This was Foxborough, by the way. We got to put some respect on Gillette.
All right. Drake May, you think? What do you think about that game? Did you put is that on your Ollie's over and unders, by the way?
I believe so.
Okay.
I do. It's for the over, which we'll talk about. But yeah,
okay.
I saw a stat. Drake May, first 2 starts, 500 yards, and 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
Drake May and one other quarterback have done that.
Is it
that quarterback was by the name of Dan Marino.
Oh,
so that's
the other GOAT.
I'm not saying Drake May is Dan Marino, but I'm saying that's
what you're saying.
That's good. It's a nice duo right there. I like it.
You bring us to the team that I really wanted to get into, the Dolphins, right? Dan Marino, we're talking about this day and age, Tua's team, right? He's coming back, and I want to really get your insight, Anthony, because I think so many that haven't played ball struggle with this aspect, but anybody can relate to this. If you had a passion early on in life, you found your identity through that, shifting afterwards. And I feel like Tua is going through that right now. So many people are pleading with him, take your health seriously, but he is a grown man. It's ultimately his decision. I want to get your insight because you're massively successful on all these different platforms outside of football, even though you still talk about it, and that transition of after football.
It's tough, man. There's a side of it that'll be interesting to see. This is a different age than we used to because never before have we had so many different people focus on making sure there's a mental, health, brain health overall. So I think the way the game is adjusted should hopefully change things the next decade, right? And I've done whole brain scans with Dr. Amen down in, SoCal. Like my brain actually is like 20 years older physically than it's supposed to be, I was told. Process-wise, I'm good, but like there's holes. It's weird stuff from the game.
Wow.
But I will say this, you have to kind of let people live their lives. He's going to make a choice, and it's his choice. He understands the possibility of what could take place. He understands who he is and how he functions. Also, from what I know of him, he's a good human, comes from a great family. So like he's I'm sure he's not making this decision alone, but I think there's a part of him that all of us have to feel like we have, especially football. I got my dog in me. Like, I got to have that edge and that grit. And if anything I'm doing or showing up with takes that piece, you take a piece of me, and it's hard to perform and function at the same level. So my guess, when I think of, like, why would someone want to do it, I go, he needs to keep him intact. Because whoever he is and how he's functioning, it got him where he is now. He needs to be able to continue to be that guy. And if someone can pull from that and take from it, for him, it may be the guardian cat, right? You can't take that from him, or else you're going to start complaining that all of a sudden he's not performing the same level because, he's a professional football quarterback. He has got all eyes on this man. And so he's got to be him. And I, respect his decision, respect his choice. Time will tell if it was the right or wrong one, but it's not our choice. And hopefully it's the right one for him and his family and his future.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. He went no on the Guardian cap.
Yeah.
That surprised me a little bit. But as Anthony was saying, I feel like I can't speak on it because it's a completely personal thing. He's making a completely informed decision. I hope, all of this goes well for his sake and his family. Only you can make that call.
Only you can make that call. And what I love about the Dolphin organization, and you look at it with the head coach, Mike Daniels and stuff, is how much love he has for Tua, right? So it's not coming from a pressure tactic at anything. He's given him that time and space. And as you had said, Anthony, allowed him to really make this decision on his own and probably with his family, of course, and feeling like whatever option he did choose, he was going to be supported. And that's the best way. That's really what you can do for the Dolphins organization. It'll be interesting. They got a big matchup right now. I mean, they got Arizona Cardinals coming into Hard Rock Stadium. Temperature's not bad, though. I would tell you what, lower 80s this time of year in Miami, I'd take it. Seems like a comfortable game weather-wise.
Yeah, Anthony, I see so much of your career beyond football is controlling what's going on from the neck up. It's a mindset type of thing. As you were training for Ninja Warrior, How many parallels were there physically, emotionally, mentally, coming from NFL football to that, which is something that is so interesting. It's something I always thought was pretty cool.
It's my work's actually an identity, which encompasses your mindset. It's who you are when you aren't thinking about who you are. There's a natural set point. I will say this, it's completely different because in football, you get a second play. And this is the way it shows up. Like, I'm the first former NFL athlete to hit a buzzer on the show. And so I wasn't expected to do well. And you get one shot. If you fall, you're done.
It's a wrap. Yeah.
It's a wrap. And so the idea was I had to prepare, and I didn't know how, but I leaned in. And part of it was this. Whenever you think about the game of football, like, there's no guarantee. There's no, pure knowing I'm going to be successful in this day or even in the game. And in that whole thing, I had the same feeling like I'd never done it before, but let's take a shot, right? So I go out, and there wasn't the seed in my head of like, what if you mess up? What if you mess up? What if you mess up? I was like, it's going to be amazing when I hit this damn buzzer, And so the mentality was one of, let me lean in hard. And so the more I leaned in, the more I prepped. When I got up there, I blew through it. So the first time up there, hit a buzzer was cool. But there is a sense of a vast difference, I'll say in this. In football, it actually benefits you to have a big lower body. In Ninja Warrior, when you're hanging by your hands.
Oh, yeah.
So, my linebacker butt wasn't helping out with the stuff. But I got it done, man. I got it done.
We're going with easy bets for this week. Money line all the way through for me. I'm going Jets over the Patriots.
Fine.
You're going to take that? All right. I thought you were gonna fight that a little bit. All right. Packers over Jaguars. I just feel like the Pack.
Yep.
I mean, last week over the Vikings, that was good. They got so much
momentum. The Jags have been sneaky good lately, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah, but they haven't been able to finish.
Right.
I feel like. And then Falcons over Tampa. I just feel like Tampa has so many injuries right now. Oh, man, I'm really feeling bad for their wide receiver core.
That was an absolutely gutting final quarter of that game, especially. Mike Evans had already been out. Then you lose Godwin. For that reason, that's one of my ollies over under. I've got Falcons, Bucks, under 46. You lose Godwin for the season, who seems to be one of the best guys in the league. That was awful. I don't know that he should have been in the game. That's a whole different story for another podcast. Evans, his hamstring, he's out for probably a month. I don't see that Bucks offense being anything close to what it was. New England and the Jets, over 41. Kind of a disrespectfully low number, I thought. Pat's offense, Drake May has put some life into that. Gerard Mayo calls the team soft after the last game, which, he might not be wrong, but I think they probably respond to that. And then lastly, Panthers, Broncos, I'm going to go under 42. Andy Dalton is out this week. Bryce Young is back. That offense, and the best of circumstances, wasn't exactly blockbuster, we'll say.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the under on that. Before we get out of here, we do want to ask you about your work on the Dark Work podcast.
Oh, yeah, man. We'll have a podcast where I get to interview great people. The Dark Work brand is about the work you do in the dark that allows you to win in the light.
It's amazing.
The truth is, I want everybody to show up to life with this mentality of I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. So I interview great people that have great success, but it's not about the X and O's. I like to know, like, what happened in the background? What'd you go through that nobody heard, nobody saw, that was the dark stuff, that was difficult, unsexy, that allowed you to come to the light with great achievements and a great sense of self. So, if you guys want to tune into some cool people talking about great stuff no one usually hears, that's what
your
it's all
story,
about.
We've been reading about it. It's a wonderful one, so I'd urge folks to check that out.
I can't just imagine those conversations, the comfort that you bring, that strength that you bring. And like you had said, I think this is something that so many people, especially in the social media age, it's the highlight era. You don't get to those highlights without some major work, that introspective work, that dark time, and you being able to have that conversation, the tough ones to have, I think helps a lot of people. So impressive what you're doing with the Dark Work podcast. And, of course, you're an author, international speaker. We talked to American Ninja Warrior. You have plans to keep doing that, by the way? What's the latest endeavor for you?
You know what? I'm way too big for the show, bro. Most of those guys are 5'8", they're like rock climbers at $160.
Yeah,
I show up like 225, 230 pounds. I'm not made to swing by my hand. So I did it for 3 years, hung it up, and now I do other stuff. I actually run Masters track with my wife, so we travel and do stuff like across the world.
See, we're going to get out of here and go work on our resumes, Steve.
Just work on
We're going to expand that. But Anthony, again, wonderful chatting with you. Thanks for being with us here on Storming the Field.
And by the way, if you want to listen to Dark Work, We've talked about that. You can find it on your podcast. But if you want to listen to more Storming the Field, it's every Friday during the football season, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Yeah, oftentimes. I mean, we've got one atmospheric river this week, but there's a lot of impactful weather. And as Anthony was saying, we aren't even to the point of the season yet where it starts to get brutal. It's coming fast. Halloween is right around the corner, and then we'll be into November. You can get the latest in the big game forecast and weather news by watching Fox Weather on your favorite TV device. If you need to find out where, you can check out foxweather.tv. And, of course, Weatherbender, Ian Oliver, WX. That's where you can find us on social.
Yeah, a lot of great topics. If you have any questions or if you want to chime in, you say, hey, guys, you could talk about this type of topic as well on Storming the Field. We'd love to hear you on social media. Until then, we'll see you next time.